Hi, and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Kitchen Conversations. What's the goal of this podcast, you might ask? No, or you might not. But if you did ask, here's the answer. Our hope is that each episode inspires just one person to pick up a paddle and try the game of pickleball for the very first time. And we think today's guest will help us achieve just that goal. I sat down recently with Johannes Lisiecki. Johannes was the owner of the South Center Athletic Club in Washington State in 1976. Now, what is so significant about 1976 in Washington State at that facility? Well, let me tell you, it was the first ever pickleball tournament in the world. Names like Steve Paranto, yes, Hall of Famer Steve Paranto, Barney McCallum, yes, founder of the game, Joel Pritchard, yes, founder of the game. They were all there. It was quite an event. He'll talk about that and more in this episode of Kitchen Conversations. Well, hello, my friend, and welcome back to the podcast. I think we should be honest with everyone and tell them that this is our second attempt. We had, I think, what they call in the industry, some technical difficulties on the first time that you and I had met. So you're back today, and I'm excited to have a second conversation with you. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, you have such a great story to tell. And I think when I started this podcast, the whole intent was to meet people like yourself who have played a very significant role in the growth of the sport in North America and perhaps beyond. And when I encountered your story, I guess it was indirectly through Steve Paranto, who is a pickleball Hall of Famer, of course, and someone that was featured in your book that you wrote, and a gentleman that I'm going to have a chance to talk to actually next week. So I'm quite excited about that. But I'd really like to start with you today, if we can, by hearing a bit about your background and how you ended up where you are today, and sort of how did that journey develop for you over the last several decades?
So I happened to see this ad in the paper and it said athletic club for sale. Okay. So what happened was I always wanted to be in the athletic business. So I went and checked out what it was. And Lord behold, that is where I've met a fellow called Dan Kotler. Well, when he started talking, I thought, boy, I am into it because I could tell that he was a promoter extraordinaire. Now, what Dan called an athletic club was not an athletic club. What he had is he was in a warehouse. He had a couple of courts laid out, and they were the surface was indoor outdoor carpet.
Oh,
And I saw this net, and then he talked to me about pickleball that he had run across back in early 70s, like 73 or something.
sorry, just those two courts that were there in the warehouse that day, were they set up as pickleball courts at that time, or were they badminton courts, or were they actually
No,
pickleball
they were
courts?
set up as pickleball courts.
Okay, so when you first met him and saw the
Yeah.
warehouse, they were
Now,
already pickleball courts. Okay, great.
yes, they were set up as pickleball courts, but they were not there to promote pickleball to the public. What he had him there is he had a dream, and he wanted to build a company, and he wanted to build, he called them sport courts, and that was courts
Okay.
that you would build in family homes.
All right.
And like play courts in family
Mm-hmm.
homes.
Mm-hmm.
And since he had heard about pickleball, he thought that might be a good idea to include because it used basketball, badminton, and all these other type normal sports.
Right, sure.
But what he noticed was, as he was working on that, he didn't think that this would lend itself in the Pacific Northwest because in the wintertime, especially because
Mm-hmm.
of weather, rain, uh, uh, wind, etc. And so he decided that he he just wanted to leave the warehouse, and then he went to LA because that was warmer climate and
Mm-hmm.
it was better to set this up and build his business. And then we were talking, and he says, I think this could be a real interesting thing if it were put together as a court, as a well, yeah, a pickleball court indoor. And
Hmm.
so I kept thinking about that, and he says, "Well, have you ever played pickleball?" I said, "No. What is it?" Well, he said, "It's like a miniature tennis game. Let me show you." So he hands me this paddle, and then he hands me this ball with holes in it. Okay, I said, "Now what am I going to do?" So he shows me what I do. I hit the ball and hit it over the net. And I don't know what it was. We played. We didn't really play a game, but we played. We didn't play long. But somehow I got fascinated. I
Right.
said, "This is a wow, this is amazing." So we talked about this, and then I I kept thinking about this, and I said, "I'm okay. I'm going to go home and I think about it." And then I came back, and then I said, "Okay, what would it be to just take over the lease here?" He says, "Well, the lease is about $3,600, and then you have about uh, another thousand. That's like a triple net lease.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't know what it is. You pay the power and you pay the 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 regular maintenance stuff." Anyhow, I kept thinking $3,000. Well, the lease was 3,000. That was for total of $4,000. Well, I didn't have $4,000. Huh? I kept thinking. I kept thinking. So finally, I thought about my friend and I called him and I asked him to go with me to look at what I had in mind. And he says to me, he says, "Now what you're up to?" Well,
What are you cooking now? What do you got cooking
yeah,
now? Right.
he knew me. I met him first in 1968, and another interesting deal. In fact, he had a Cadillac, a '59 Cadillac for sale for 200 some bucks, and I went to see it. We liked the car, but it had bad tires. And I said, "Well, I tell you what, I'll go to Sears and put some recaps on it." Those days you could still buy recaps. All
Right.
right, I bought the car. And from buying that car, a friendship developed, which is still alive today. He's 94 now. He's
Oh,
exactly
wow.
10 years older and the same birthday as my wife. And so that's how that came about. And I called him. I take him there and I walk him in there and he sees these courts, nothing there. And I tell him what I think could be done with this. So, and I wonder whether you could loan me $3,000 for the lease for the
Hmm.
first months so I can make arrangements through the bank. Well, he says, "I'll talk to Shirley about it." That's his wife. 3 days later, 2 days, that was on the weekend, sort of Mondays, Shirley comes to our house with 3 grand cash.
No, really. She believed in it.
Well, you
Good.
see, Bob is the kind of guy, he doesn't say
Doesn't say
much,
much.
he doesn't talk much. He is a very conservative guy. He acts upon things. So that was his confirmation that he thought I could be successful. So he was so convinced that he actually put his money in it. Now that's a rarity. No matter today is almost unheard of.
Yeah.
Now, so that's how I ended up with the sports court facility there. That was August 75. We immediately started promoting. I hired a couple of people. And the interesting thing is, I had no person whom I knew before except Bob become part of my team. They were
Oh.
all brand new people that I hired. And the I had an ad put out, and then a guy walks in. His name was Danny Kutsonis. Never forget him. How could I? Danny became my second lieutenant, so to speak. He was a black belt karate guy, and he was a great part in building the whole thing. Huh?
Let me ask you just quickly before I forget the question, but
Yeah.
tell me what was happening inside of that building when you first took over the lease. What sort of activities were happening? There were the two pickleball courts. I understand. What else? What other sorts of activities did you have built into the
Nothing.
program? Nothing.
Absolutely
Just the
nothing.
warehouse and the two pickleball courts. Wow.
That's it.
Okay.
Just the two presentation courts. Okay.
Got you. Okay.
Now, then, and then of course you had the odd people that might come in and play a little or so on. But what I started then is I started to motor it. In fact, we got the Tukwila Police Department into the act at the court. So by August 31st, we had we had enrolled the first two members. Now, from there, my speculation was to enroll enough members to
Mhm.
have to pay for this whole thing. The expansion was to be I could hold four pickleball courts. So we expanded it to four pickleball courts, but we had nobody to play yet. But we started to get people coming in dribbles at first. Membership started to grow.
Mhm.
I hired an architect, and then we designed the entire front part of the building because my idea of a fitness center or an athletic facility was in those days you did have no co-ed facilities. You had what you called the European health spas. The European health spas, there
Mhm.
were muscle gyms,
Right.
and they
Yeah.
only would work 4 days for men, 3 days for women. Okay, they only had the basics like a bathroom, um, and a shower and the usual plain things and a lot of weights. So my aesthetic idea was to A, create a co-ed club. Number two, have all facilities like change rooms, toilet facilities, tanning salons, all these things. The only thing we couldn't have is, of course, a swimming pool. But the interesting thing is, I built it and then I built a deck over top where we could do other things, use it for exercise and
Mm.
etc. to do auxiliary things. So I had this whole thing under construction. I got a banker to finance a lot of it, uh, but it got more expensive as we went along. So kept scratching my head. The members weren't coming in, and as we were building this whole thing, oh, in the meantime, I connected the Seahawks had just been formed in Seattle. So I got in touch with those, and pretty soon we have Seahawk members coming to the club. Anyway, we had the Seahawk members coming to the club. Now imagine these big guys from the Seahawk. I mean, 200 pounders or so on playing pickleball. It was hilarious. So
Big football guys. Yeah, I bet.
yeah, and then I got to the Sounders. I talked to the Sounders coach. Well, then we had the Sounders come in, and they just had a blast. They loved it because they thought that that would be tremendous training. So then, a couple of Sounders got together and they created soccer volleyball. Okay, now soccer volleyball is we raise the net, and then what they would do is they train kicking and heading over the ball, over the net. And the thing would be the same as pickleball. You had to return it. If you miss it, you lost the point.
Right.
And that became people loved to watch it, and they really liked it because they thought that really built their agility, etc.
Hmm.
All right, so we had those guys going, and so then it just started to evolve. People started to show up. We made advertising. I had it first. Uh, One of the biggest and most famous um, commentators on Seattle sports. He was an absolute genius when it came to advertising products, and he was loved. He was well known. And so he did then some advertising for us, and it started slowly building, but not enough to cover the costs. So it was the end of the year. I got the final loan. It was just before Christmas. The banker thought, well, he thought this could be a different success. So he put his money on it. He gave me some more money.
Hmm.
We created a big promotion for the first Monday of the new year. How should I say? It was not as successful as I had uh, hoped, but I did enroll a bunch of members. So then we sit down, and Danny and I, and I think Dan Kotler had just come up from L.A. for some reason because he still lived in that area. We sat there. Okay, what could we do to make this successful? Now here is the coincidences that happen. Well, as we were talking, the idea came up as the bicentennial year.
Mm.
How about we create a tournament? Okay, sounds pretty good. What? How are we going to go about it? This you have to find people, everything else, because nobody knows what pickleball is. No one had heard about a tournament or anything of
Right.
that nature.
Sorry. In this moment, as this is all sort of happening, and it sounds very exciting, was there any other facility in the area offering indoor pickleball, or were you the only one in that whole region that
Absolute,
had
there was
indoor
nothing. The
nothing, right?
pickleball had not grown in any way beyond the home
Right.
court and beyond the streets. Like
Sure.
Barney McCallum, even they were playing at his house on the street.
Right, one of
So
the inventors of the game. Yeah, so what you were doing was really quite unique in and of itself. Before the tournament even happened,
yeah,
the fact that you had an indoor pickleball facility was really quite unique in that part of the world. And really, I think
absolutely,
we forget. Yeah, we forget today because the game's become so popular. Just how unique that must have been. So I think that's a
yeah.
point worth making. That and I wanted to make sure we got to that today because I think you should be given a lot of credit for that alone, let alone what you ended up doing with the tournament. But yeah, the
Well,
fact that
it
you
was
saw the vision in that
yeah, it,
warehouse to
it,
do
it
that.
was the first pickleball court in the indoor court in the world. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Of organized. Let's put it that way. Then he actually came out with it. He says, "Why not do a tournament?"
Hmm.
Okay, that was the first thing. We hadn't decided on the name yet, but we had in mind because it is bicentennial. But with the reception we received promoting that in the first week of January, we thought we probably could put together a good tournament. No idea how many we could attract, whether we would attract five,
Right.
10, 50, or
Hmm.
100. There was absolutely no idea whatsoever. So we said, okay, we set it up. So what we did is we sent out flyers and made phone calls to let people know, and the ones that were coming, about setting up a tournament, and that we plan to set up a tournament. It came all back very positive. People were calling in, when is the tournament going to be, etc. And how would it be set up? Or first, this question is always, when is the tournament? When is the tournament? All right, we sit down and say, when is a good time? First of all, we got to have a name. Okay, we call it the Bicentennial Tournament. Then we what is the date? Well, it was January. We have February. We have March. And things were tight, very, very tight financially. And I must honestly say, the club, folding the club, there were times it was 95%. I wasn't going to pull it off. And, but every time, for some reason, the banker came through with some extra money. He believed that this would go. So we decided on March 5th, 6th, and 7th. That was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So what then happened was we started to seriously working. We started promoting. We sent out flyers, etc., etc. Everybody was on edge. People were calling in and calling in, and this is how it moved closer. Even the construction was just about completed. Everything looked excited. Even the banker was excited and other people. So on the 4th of March, we were just sitting there on pins and needles. We had no idea what will happen tomorrow.
I'll bet.
Well, it was incredible. Here is what we had planned to do and what we did. To attract people, we made it a open tournament. There is no fee, no qualification how well you played. Anybody who would come was invited and was able to play. So what happened is, let's say people started to come in. We had them sign in at the door, and that's all there to it. And then we lined them up. And then what we did is we had enough pedals, which we got all the balls I got from Barney McCallum. I used to pick the balls up at his office at the Seattle Farmers Market Center. That's one of the most spectacular farmers markets in the world, literally. And Barney had an office there, so we got all the balls from him. And then he had made some wooden pedals that I picked some up too. Now we then they had the pedals. Some people bought their own. That were usually some that had played before.
Mhm.
So we just put them in the preliminary. We just put them together. So it could be one of the best players would play a novice. Okay, so be it. But what it did is it wonderfully cleaned out. After Friday, we had all the stuff cleaned out. We didn't realize yet, but we had over 80 people there.
Wow,
So
what a turnout. What a turnout.
yeah, it is. It's just
Yeah.
it just it's just unbelievable. So then what we did is a lot of them stayed and they wanted to see what's going on. And then Saturday, it got into some serious playoffs, and it just was it just was like, what's going on here? And there were no words that we could express. Then he would walk around the
Yeah.
court like this and raising his fist, and so then finally there was real organization. I mean, there were some good players. In fact, we didn't know it at that time, but I mention it in a minute. So it just was enthusiasm. It was excitement. It was like an explosion with all these people there playing. The only time you've ever seen it, of course, it wasn't until the 80s you would see something like that. So we did we had the players come in from a whole bunch of them from the UW, tennis players. They had no idea what pickleball is, none of them. They had heard of it, but no one had played it. So got into it, and they just caught on just like that. It was similar to tennis. It's just they had to get used to the court and to the paddle and the ball. So they were into it was absolutely a vengeance. Is that a good word to use?
Yeah.
They were into it. It was just unreal, and some of them actually really peeled out.
Johannes, what do you think when all of this was happening and you the first time that you picked up that paddle and the pickleball and you started to hit it across the net and get a feel? And I, you've described this weekend that was happening. It was somewhat electric and very energetic, and people were just beside themselves with the excitement of it all. And what do you, in that moment, do you recall what were you thinking about the game? What is it about pickleball that can create that type of excitement? I mean, it's a funny game. It basically is a wiffle ball, and in the times that we're talking, a wooden paddle, basically a what would have been a modern day ping pong paddle at the time, and a little bit bigger. But I'm still trying to figure out as a player and a fan of the game today in 2026, what is so appealing about this game? What is it that draws people into this game and hooks them for life? Because what you did in 1975 and 76, at the athletic center and ultimately developing this tournament, which has, made history and, and subsequently the book, which we'll talk about here in a bit. But what is your opinion of that? What about this game is so addictive and so attractive?
Actually, it's very simple because you see what attracted me is that I saw in pickleball because I remember me sitting in a chair before I even decided after I had played it and looking at these courts with my eyes actually closed and I was kept thinking, could this be a commercial enterprise?
Right. Okay.
Well, I wasn't sure because you see, if I would have really done my due diligence and looked into this, I would never have started it for the simple reason is where would the customers come from? There was
Mm.
no customer base, no player base. But anyway, and I thought, well, maybe I can create it because what attracted me was you see the big games today, whether you take volleyball, whether you take basketball, whether you take especially soccer, for example. Well, soccer is very close to the idea of pickleball of attracting people, but baseball, you know, the average person as they grow up, they could not participate in basketball. They could not participate in pickleball, not pickleball, in the other major sports out there, because they even small kids or young kids couldn't participate unless they were good in that particular sport and possibly make a career. And with those sports, they are always promoted as career and big money sports. But pickleball was different because what I noticed was that people could actually get involved into this sport.
Hmm.
It was not like tennis because the percentage of tennis players compared to the population is probably pretty remote. See, because you cannot, yes, some people play tennis until they uh, get very high in age, no question about it. But it does not create that kind of excitement as pickleball because um, this is actually what attracted me because you have father and son, father and daughter, mother and son, mother and daughter. Some of those little kids that I have seen online,
Right.
they are mind-boggling, and
Yes.
some of the older people, there is no way that they could ever get that excited in a conventional sport.
Yeah. Well, I had a chat last week with a very interesting gentleman out of the UK, Johannes, and I asked him that similar question, and he's very involved in the sport and in the pickleball community. He runs a very large Facebook group out of the UK, and I asked him kind of what he thought the appeal was, and he made a very interesting point and something I hadn't thought about. I mean, the cost of entry and the accessibility of it is kind of what you're talking about. If you have a pair of shoes, that's really all you need. Most clubs are offering demo paddles or try before you buy type programs now. But the other interesting point that he made, and I never thought of it, he said, unlike a lot of other sports, the games are very short. You go on the court for 12, 15, maybe 18 minutes, and the game's over. And so then you come off the court, the next people go out, and you get a chance to sit courtside. And we get to talk to each other, and we get to know each other, and we share stories, and we become friends. And then from that friendship, we develop new games. And now we're booking a game next week with each other because we like each other. And so it was an interesting observation. And he was saying, he came out of a 50-year tennis career. So he played tennis since he was a young child and gave up tennis for pickleball. So he had a very fascinating story. But his whole premise to the popularity of it all was really centered around the fact that you go in, you play, you step out, and now you have a chance to build some friendships. And I think that's part of it. And certainly what you're saying, the accessibility of the sport, I think is core to its success for sure. Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you. It's a great thought.
Absolute. I didn't even register that with
Mhm.
the cost. I mean,
Right.
even a basketball will cost more than it is. You see,
Yeah.
this is why I find it so ridiculous. These people charging $400 for a paddle. That's
Yes.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is totally, and they sell it.
So take me back to the tournament then. I don't want to lose track of that. So you
But
have this event over the course of a 3-day weekend. 80 people show up. You get down to where there's some pretty good competition. You've got lots of excitement. What happens then? How the tournament wraps up, and how do we segue from that weekend into the book that you ultimately put together? And
mhm.
what took you so long to do the book? What was the story behind the tournament happening in 76 and the book coming out? And can you help me understand that a little bit better?
Yes, I never, I never ever had in mind to write the book
Okay.
because I thought, it's just another story. And then I read some things about pickleball, but and all I read is the rehashed thing, was invented on Bainbridge Island, and the conflicting things, about the dog and whatever
Right.
you write about the whole thing. Um, I It was in April 2 years ago. Yes, April 2 years ago. I received a birthday card from this friend of mine. And when I called him, well, it says on the birthday card, it says, the game is on. Do you
Okay.
have balls?
Oh, that's what he sent you for your
Well,
birthday.
now, and let's see, I don't even know where I put it now.
Oh, I love
Anyhow,
it. Yeah, but he sent
and
that to you on your birthday.
I,
Sure.
I just cracked up.
I love
So
it.
I called Bob up, and I was still laughing on the phone. I still laughing. So anyhow, he said, as we make the conversation, he says, you should write about that.
Oh, okay.
I said, well, maybe I do. So I sat here for a while afterwards, a couple of weeks or so on, and I thought, hmm, I'll try. I'll try and write it. and see what comes up. So I started writing the book, and there are many reasons or so on. I never used an editor or so on, but I used quite a bit of IA to put it together, and it doesn't turn out to be, the story is fine because it ends up to be more like a fireside story, as you
Hmm.
just tell a story. It's not like a novel or a precise biography. What it is a biography in a form of a story. The pictures didn't turn out as well as they should have. That's why I redid the ebook, because I can change the ebook anytime. So anyhow, it needed professional help. So I won't say it is a great book, but it's a great story.
Right, right. And
That's
sometimes those are two totally different things. A great
yeah,
book and a great story don't necessarily
e-
coincide. Yes,
exactly. You see,
yes.
it's like I would have tell it. I did now. Now I worked on that. Now imagine that's now 2 years ago already, and there it is. It's
Amazing.
that's how it got about the book. Again, coincidence. A
Yes.
birthday
Yeah.
card.
A birthday card sparks it. It's interesting to me. I've been around the game now, Johannes, for about 3 years. I love the game. I consider myself a super fan. I really do enjoy it. And I think there's a lot of value for me personally to be out there and meeting people and connecting. And this podcast, me meeting you today, doesn't happen if I'm not involved in pickleball, and if you don't have the story that you have, and if Steve Paranto isn't somehow connected to both of us in different ways for different reasons. But uh, I'm disappointed that I didn't know the story, that I didn't hear your story sooner. So I'm hoping in some small way that as this podcast starts to gain a bit of traction over the next little while, that we're able to share a bit of that, because it is
Sure.
absolutely a story in the pickleball, in the history of pickleball, that really needs to be told. And
Yeah.
I've yet to come across it anywhere else. And that doesn't mean it's not out there. It just means I haven't found it yet. But
No,
I think
no,
your
it isn't.
story is a terrific story.
No, it is not out there. You see, the reason it's not out there is because no one asked.
Right. Right. But in
Because it's
1976, yeah, sorry, the tournament wraps up that weekend.
yeah,
And then, your life takes a bunch of different directions because it doesn't stay still for long. I've learned that
uh-huh.
about you in the short time I've known you. So you move on to new and different things and sell the club. But the story just kind of goes quiet at that point. It goes a bit dormant. The weekend is kind of over. There's not a repeat event, like there's not an annual event that comes out of this. So here we are all these years later, in 2026, sitting down together and talking about something that happened in 1976. I think that's pretty fascinating.
Well, let's touch a little bit on what happened after I left the club.
Sure.
It some very interesting things. I literally just about ran out of money, period, because my
Mhm.
and I write about it in the book, because and I get to the point where my financing ability was starting to run dry. And by coincidence, I get a phone call from the owner of the European Health Spas. And he asked me whether I would be interested in selling the club. Well, since I was running out of money, I seemed to have, because it needed some serious financial backing,
Mhm.
I was ready to sell the club. The the and that's again I say in the story, but they took over the club and they, in a way, expanded it. I understand they did do some tournaments, or tried to anyway, but I don't think it touched them, because the manager of the European Health Spas, he was an extremely athletic guy. And we would play games sometimes to 50
Wow.
points. By the time, now another thing we didn't mention is that at South Center Athletic Club, our games all went to 21 points.
Oh, okay.
We
Not
didn't have
11.
the little games. 21 points, and you needed 2 points to win.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
anyhow, so they took over that. And then what happened was, you see, South Center Athletic Club, I believe, is the second most important event that came about after the invention, because it took it technically right, it took it out of the backyard and put
Mm-hmm.
it in the public big time.
Right. Right.
Now, then what they did is, you see, in my concept, athletic concept, Family Fitness Center expanded this. Now, Family Fitness Center now started to design and bring and build brand new clubs. And they are all built copying my concept.
Right.
Same basic concept, except more elaborate new. And they added a small swimming pool to it. See, the club South Center had actually a jogging track around the perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly how much it was, but I had a guy. He did even that internal jogging track. He'll run a 6.5 minute mile.
Wow.
I could do it. I could do it in about 9 at the time.
That's still
But
pretty quick.
yeah, and so what they did with the new clubs is they actually, I have a picture in the book, they actually built a jogging track above the pickleball
Mm-hmm.
court. And it's about in the second floor almost. And that's where a jogging track goes around the whole darn club. And then
Right.
the rest of it is basically plus the added racquetball, etc.
Sure.
Now, that is on that part. But then in the early 80s, I understand they there's a guy in North Seattle. I forget now his name. He's actually, I think he's actually in the Pickleball Hall of Fame. But he has done apparently other things. But he started to hold tournaments, small tournaments in North Seattle. But
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't until 1982.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
Long after your
long
tournament in
after South
76.
Center.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure that his info, a lot of it came from South Center.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, that was 82. Then, and I think the third big event that happened in pickleball is 1984.
Paranto.
Paranto, his father, came up with the first composite pickleball paddle.
Yeah. And ironically, from Boeing using floorboards, excess floorboard
Yeah,
material. So
exactly.
there's the interesting thing is here you are in 1976, having had a career at Boeing at one point, short lived, but
Uh-huh.
there nonetheless, traveled across the country to Seattle, had a great time, got the 2 days off with pay. We're making good money. And then all of a sudden, all these years later, there's another Boeing connection. So I really can't believe how interlaced this pickleball industry is. And
Exactly.
somebody that you meet today, you just never know where you might bump into them down the road, which is
No,
great. But
no.
that tournament and that weekend and subsequently the book, just a fascinating piece of pickleball history. And it's
Yeah.
a real honor for me to have a chance to be a small part of that and to hear your story directly. And I'm so pleased about that. For those listening today, whenever today might be for them, how do we access that book? Is there a way for someone to purchase that book or to go online and buy it? How
Yeah,
do we
just
get to the book?
go to Amazon.
Okay, so it's on Amazon. And is
It's
it a
on
paperback?
Amazon.
Yeah, is it a paperback, Johannes? Is it
Yeah,
a
there's a paperback and there's a
okay,
preliminary ebook. But
great.
the paperback is there, and I will be coming out with a new ebook the updated ebook very shortly.
Okay. Now, when you say updated, is it just a physical change to the book, or are you changing the content of the book?
Some content, but
Okay.
not the major content.
Right.
But I added a few things to the content.
Wow.
It's
Terrific.
a this is actually a live book, and
Okay.
I made the ebook a live book, and eventually there may be something else. There may be some
Mhm.
stories from other people that might want to contribute to it. You see,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
unfortunately, I'm having some age problems now. I don't know whether I still get to do it.
Right.
See,
Right.
the worst is the lack of concentration. As you notice,
Mm.
sometimes I can't even remember Steve Paranto.
Yeah. Well, listen, with all due respect to your age, I think you're doing terrific. I
Thank
think,
you.
I'm sitting here talking to you today at 59. And if I can be half as sharp as you are at 84, I'll be quite thrilled. So I'd go a little easy on yourself. I
84.
think,
Thank you. I'll be
yeah.
86 next month.
Okay, I thought we were talking 84. Even better. I'll be even happier then when I get to 86. So, well, today's
Yeah.
been great, and I appreciate you coming back and giving us a second try. And it's just such a pleasure to have met you, and I'm so glad we connected. And I'm going to make sure that I do my part on this end to get the message out and share a bit of your story. And if you don't mind, I'd like to stay in touch.
I thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And I'll always be here to help you build your your podcast. If I
Yeah.
can do anything positive with it or help you,
I
just
appreciate that.
ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's if there's one thing I would take away from this pickleball community that you and I are part of in different ways, it's the generosity of the
Yeah.
people. I am so touched by, I basically started this, as I think I mentioned to you when we first met, just after, at the beginning of the new year. So
Yeah.
just nicely a couple months into it now. And the response to my, reaching out to people like yourself,
Uh-huh.
completely out of the blue and saying, hello,
Yeah.
I'd really like a chance to talk to you. It's been overwhelming just how responsive and generous people have been with their time. And I really, appreciate having you here today and taking up a bit of your afternoon. So, yeah, been a very enjoyable conversation.